for joining us. I'm your hostess, Kayla Byers, and this is Champions of Discourse presents Debate This. This season, we will see two debaters go head-to-head in an impromptu battle of wits and passion. Each week, we will have a new judge to adjudicate the round. And by the end of the season, we will crown the winner. If you'd like to hear a bit more information about how debate works, check out our previous intro video. The link is in the description box. With each round, we hope to equip you with the tools necessary to be a critical thinker. The judge for this round is Eric Peabody. Peabody is currently residing in Houston, Texas. He is a co-host of Social Complex, a podcast that discusses social issues and resolutions. He is currently in school working toward his degree in education and also communication. Let's go ahead and get this round started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Champions Discourse Presents Debate This. I am your host, Leah, and I'm with my opponent, Janelle. Today, we have our judge, Peabody, and thank you very much for y'all being here. Great. And can you just check your screen, make sure that that is correct? Awesome. All right, so we have 10 minutes of prep. So whenever you just start the time, just let us know.
All right, timer is going to start at 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 10 minutes. Done.
All right.
All right. Who would like to go first?
This would be the government, so that's me. So it's 6 minutes. You keep it time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Just let me know when the time starts.
So 6. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. You can go.
Thank you very much to my opponent and to the adjudicator and timekeeper of today. Our topic is Frankie Beverly and Maze is the best theme music for a barbecue. We're going to do a little bit of resolution analysis to define how we're going to argue this topic. Frankie Beverly and Maze, we're going to say the music in that era. And so it's not just the Frankie Beverly and Maze. We could look at Tina Marie and others. Is the best means that it's the top. It gets the greater draw. Then for a barbecue, we're identifying this as any gathering in pretty much the Black community, like a cookout, a barbecue, a funeral, a wedding, any event, a birthday party, any event where Black people are gathering. The value we're going to use is community, because community is very important when you are talking about Black people. We are a very communal people. The criteria that we're using is qualitative versus quantitative analysis. So it's not just who has the most arguments, but who can develop the quality in their arguments. And so with that, we're going to get into the first point, which is it's everyone's party as soon as this music comes on. It's mostly clean and it's very nostalgic. So there are memories that are created because, your aunt, your grandmother, your kinfolk come in and they hear the music. Everybody's coming to the dance floor. Everybody's moving and shaking a little bit, and it gets them talking. It gets them communal, and they're not. And then the kids can even get involved with it because it's not like sexually perverse music. We don't have to hear sexually charged lyrics or lyrics demeaning, bashing men or bashing women. We can have this kind of break where we get the opportunity to just be free in the music. So you can have grandma and grandpa join in on dances and it becomes like a full affair. We create engaging environments when we encourage community, and the communal music is the song of our people. Having music that plays that brings everyone together is of the utmost importance, because that's how we get the draw. That's how we get movement. That's how we get the communities, the generation to generation talking to each other. That's how we definitely bridge gaps. Especially when we're cooking in the kitchen, when we're working in the yard, when we are going to work. Communal music is the song and story of our people. The second point is that the music has themes of joy. This is our idea of frolicking. Playing this kind of music is the equivalent of seeing Amy frolic in a field. This is our frolic. So when we have this kind of music playing, we don't have to worry about what's going on the other side of the fence. We don't have to worry about what's going on right outside our front door. We can come in from a hard day at work. We can come in from a hard week. We can come in from life just being harsh to us and just let go and be free in this music. When this music plays, it gives us the break and the exhale that we need to just let go of all of other life's pressures and be able to focus on and celebrating the event. Even if there's no event to celebrate, we're just together, and that's what we're celebrating. This is the only type of music that can be played for hours with multiple tracks that every person in the community can jam to without it being offensive or without it causing division, without it causing harm or being looked at as demeaning, especially towards women. When we look at other types of music, there's other music where women are essentially subjugated and dehumanized, where they're looked at as playthings, where they're looked at as just a means to an end and just blowing through them without regard for their life or anything else that they have. But playing this kind of music, it uplifts everyone and saying, hey, let's have a good time. You think of Earth, Wind, and Fire. You think of people who make this kind of music to just let go, be free, and be in the moment. And with that, I urge a government ballot.
Is that all?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Just for clarification, we had 2 points?
2 points, yeah.
Oh.
2 points. Okay.
So you're 7, yeah. Okay, cool.
Yep. Whenever, Peabody, whenever you're ready, let me know.
6 minutes, right? 7 minutes.
I have 7 minutes.
All right.
Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I first like to thank my opponent, the government, as well as our timekeeper and adjudicator, Peabody, for being here. Our case is Frankie Beverly and Maze is the best theme music for a barbecue. The government has provided some rather loose defining of Frankie Beverly and Maze being music of that era. And I just did a dabble of research using my own Apple iTunes that I have close to me. That generally is the 1980s when Frankie Beverly and Maze hit songs sort of came out. So I'm going to take it as that. They're defining barbecue as any gathering in the Black community. We don't really get much of best, a definition for what best music means, values, community. So we're going to accept all these things. First, I'm going to go off case and then I'm going to go on case. So off case, one, barbecues are not monolithic, right? Including Black community events, how they're defining barbecues in general, right? So there is no singular song that can fully encapsulate what Black people at multiple events will feel, whether that be a funeral, which might be a little more somber, but may have some upbeat tones, whether that be a graduation, a wedding, and so on and so forth, right? Some of these events are going to be more crunk, depending upon your demographic of Black folks who are there. They might be more laid back. Like I said, they might be more somber and reflection based if you're having a funeral ceremony. So with that, there is no singular song that can fully encapsulate, right, what a Black event should feel like. They aren't always going to be joyful either, right? So that's my first point, is that these barbecues are not a monolith. Thus, there's no one song or one era of music, right, that the government is pointing out to, this sort of 1980s era of music that can speak to that. Two, I think there is a rub here as well, right? By situating us within music of this era, we're creating this inherent sort of generational divide. So music from the 1980s is not necessarily music that will always be identifiable by your younger millennials or your Gen Z, right? And I think we saw this past year when Beyonce herself did a remix to Frankie Beverly and Maze's Before I Let You Go. I was saying that was my point around that there is a generational divide, right? And that not all folks from Gen Z or even young millennials will recognize some of this music from the 1980s. And sure, Black gatherings are a way to introduce it to them, but does that make it the best music? Does it truly make it communal or universal? Not necessarily, right? And so I think we also need to take that into consideration, is that by saying best, we're also excluding ourselves and limiting ourselves to a particular age groups and demographics who are certainly familiar with the catalog of music from that era, right? And then again, going to my point around, this is biased around best, right? When I mentioned earlier, there are different types of Black gatherings, right, that will elicit different feelings. Say, for instance, some will be more crunk, some will be more laid back. And so to argue that, this 1980s music is universal and it is best for Black gatherings, I think is false, right? If I go to a Black Greek cookout with my sorority sisters, I'm not necessarily interested in hearing Frankie Beverly's Before I Let You Go. I would rather hear Shake That Monkey because that's a song that I can stroll to. I would rather hear Back That Ass Up by Juvenile. Some people want to hear Formation. These are also classics. And to say that Frankie Beverly Maze or music from this era is the best, I think that's a stretch, and that speaks to a particular generation, and that speaks to a particular type of Black gathering. And it is to assume that Black people are thus a monolith. Right? Because I guarantee you're going to get a lot more people out there shaking that monkey than they are going to be to potentially doing the electric slide to Frankie Beverly and Maze's classic hit, Before I Let You Go, which I certainly would be remiss without saying. It certainly is a classic. But is it universal? Is it the best music for everything? Not necessarily. Now I would like to get back to the government's case. It's everyone's party. Again, this goes to my point that I made here. Not necessarily, right? If we're saying that music from the 1980s is going to cater to everyone, that's not necessarily the case. They're arguing that this music is clean. I don't know if y'all have heard some of the lyrics to Teddy Pendergrass, who more or less was telling you, turn off the lights, let's pull out the cord, let's get down to business. And it sounded real nice, but it also sounded like the neighbors know my name. A la our young light-skinned rappers and singers around today. So let's not act like 1970s and 80s they was having all of this clean music. They just made it sound nice. Nostalgic for who? It's nostalgic for folks who grew up in that generation. And we have to recognize that there are many more millennials, many more Gen Z folks that are starting and beginning to outnumber baby boomers, right? Moving and shaking music. That's applicable to music, some of the music that I mentioned today, more the contemporary stuff. And it helps bridge gaps. Sure, it can be conversational pieces, but again, you have many of these young people who have not been exposed to this type of music. And again, it goes to my point around number 2, generational divide. Themes of joy. Again, the government is arguing that, this music elicits joy. Not all Black gatherings, as you're defining Black barbecues, are about producing joy. If we talk about a funeral, I don't know if that's necessarily an event that we're trying to be joyful or simulate joy. That's a moment to be somber. That's one you might want to pour it up for the homies. You might want to reflect on some Tupac. You might want to reflect on a little bit of music that has depth that folks still know about, that puts you in that mood of reflection to think about somebody's life. And so again, if we're using the government's definitions of Frankie Beverly and Maze being 1980s music, inherent generational divide there, right? If we're using the government's definition of, barbecue being music for any gathering within the Black community, including funerals, including more somber moments, again, it's not always going to be moments of joy where we're going to want to hit the electric slide. You might just want to, as I said earlier, pour one out for the homies, be more reflective, kind of just be in your feelings, right? You might want to twerk, you might want to stroll. So I urge an opposition vote.
5 seconds. All right. Whew, that was a good one.
All right. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Okay. Y'all can hear me, right? Okay, cool.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm going to go off case and on case. Let me know when you're ready. I'm at 4 minutes.
Oh, Yeah, 4 minutes. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
All right. Thank you to the opposition for presenting these arguments. So here's the thing. Saying that Black people are not a monolith is we know this we understand this. We know that being Black is a spectrum, and there's no singular song that she said that there's no singular song to celebrate events. Let's understand this. When I did my definition, I said music in that era, which she accepted. However, she said that it's music in the 1980s. Is not, no, the year 1980. An era is not dwindled down to a single year. So we can take, so what I said was that music in this era, so it would be all of the 80s music in that time frame. Frankie Beverly and Maze and their music did not just come out in a single year. So she said that there's no singular song to celebrate events. There's multiple songs in that time to celebrate the crunk time, to celebrate the somber time, to celebrate the times where you just need to reflect. That's her first point. Her second point says that it creates generational divide. Cross apply my argument. My first argument made on case that this actually increases the communal feel from generation to generation, because when you're at different events, whether you are at a funeral, whether you're at a wedding, whether you're at a birthday party, or whether you're strolling with the Greeks, there will always be older people who are there. But what the opposition is trying to say is that we have put away our old people and there's only young people. Yes, young people are starting to outnumber the boomers. However, the boomers are still here. And because of that, we need to make sure as a community, as Black people, that we don't just lose our wisdom. This music brings them out. This music helps them to connect with us. And just because some of the young people have not heard it does not mean that it's not available, that we don't play it. Just because they Beyonce did do a remix that brought attention to it. What was she doing? She was honoring music of the 1980s. Going on to her next point, she says that we're creating bias by saying what's the best, and there's other different types of music. That there is so much music that was produced in the 1980s that even Puff Daddy started remixing it so that he can make music in the 90s. So having the 80s music, playing the original songs, getting back to that creates that nostalgia so that we can have more community in our during our events. On to case. Yeah, on to case. So the first point, I lost this. Oh, yeah, sorry. On case. She pretty much stated that the generational divide is what's causing in the first point, and that the music is not clean. I never said the music was clean. I said that it was clean enough so that the kids are not bombarded with sexually perverse lyrics. It is very different to say, hey, turn off the lights, light a candle, as opposed to drop down and get your eagle on, girl, or bust it open for a real one. These are very different lyrics, and having lyrics that are less perverse would help to have not only the older generation but also the younger generation come in and be more communal, so that the lyrics are not just being perverse. If we have hashtag WAP come on, how likely is it that your aunt, who probably shouldn't be, or your grandmother, come out and start busting it open out on the dance floor? Not gonna happen, regardless of what situation it is. I don't care if it's her birthday, Jesus' birthday, it doesn't matter. She's not gonna be doing all that. But you play some music from the Frankie Beverly and Maze era, she might come out there and move a little something. To the second point, she said that some music needs to be somber. There is somber music in the decade of the 80s. The 80s did produce a lot of moving and shaking music, but there's also music of reflection. There's music of somber tone. For that, I urge a government ballot. Thank you.
6 minutes. All right, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, start.
All right, I'm going to pick up with the government's case and just work my way backwards. So first, we talked about this is music for everyone. That's their point. And they did say, I wrote the list, that this music is clean. It's nostalgic. It gets to moving and shaking. Erotic City and Freakazoid are not clean. It's not clean music. right? So if your point rests on the fact that this music brings everybody out, it's not sexually perverse, the 80s produced that. Prince was a sex symbol of the 1980s, right? Teddy Pendergrass, sex symbol of the 1980s, who could arguably rival a Tremaine today, right? A Chris Brown today with some of the sexually perverse language. So again, I urge you all to dismiss this music, to dismiss this point of this is everyone's party, and that, you know, people can listen to this music from the 1980s because it's clean. Again, they're not addressing nostalgic. Nostalgic for who? It can't be nostalgic for millennials and Gen Z if they weren't born in the 1980s. They don't have nothing to look back to the 1980s for. So that's just not everyone's party. So they are not upholding their argument here. If you're saying that it's universal and it's going to apply to everyone, it's not going to apply to young people. To their second point, they said in their point, their argument was that this music brought themes of joy. I brought in the point that you're saying in your definition that we're talking about barbecues that are gatherings for the Black community, how you're defining it. So how does a funeral bring out themes of joy when this is a somber moment? Sure, we might have some joyful reflections, but overall, this is a somber moment. This is your point. You're not sticking to your point here. And so again, I argue again to also dismiss that point. Now to my case, point number one that I made is that barbecues are not a monolith. And that spoke directly to the government's definition, right? I also said that if we're sticking to how they're defining Frankie Beverly and Maze, which is music of the 1980s, and it was plural, 1980s, right? Not just 1980. We have to recognize that there was a certain type of music that was being popularized during this time. That certainly is R&B. That certainly is soul music. It certainly is a continuation of a little bit of jazz music. But in the 1980s, it's not until the late 1980s that we see the birth of hip hop. So to insinuate that crunk music or trap music or any kind of like Southern hip hop or anything is around is just false and does not align with history. You do not have hip hop until really late 1980s, which emerges out of New York. You don't have crunk until later on in the 90s. You don't have trap music until you have T.I. and folks who come upon much later. So again, this goes to my point of there is not much diversity in music if we are solely sticking to music of the 1980s, because there are certainly genres that were within the forefront, and there were genres that just simply did not exist historically, and we have to recognize that. Now, the government doesn't really speak to my issues around generational divide enough, right? That music is supposed to bring everyone together. I'm not saying that we need to throw the baby boomers away, but we also have to recognize that many baby boomers are getting up in age, and that your barbecues are getting, your cookouts are getting younger and younger. You have cookouts that are now being led by Gen X, which was the hip hop generation. Gen X, these are folks who were born and came of age during the golden era of hip hop, right? So for them, the message by Curtis Blow, you know, a hip hop, a hibbity hibbity hip hop, that might be much more of a classic for them, right? And then you have millennials who come of age in Juvenile and Shake That Monkey era, and now you have these Gen Zers who are coming of age in Megan Thee Stallion and them's era. We now have three generations that predate baby boomers who would much more identify with this sort of music of the 1980s and Frankie Beverly and Maze. Who are we catering to? Again, this goes to my point around the generational divide, that they just really aren't responding here. I think to your point, government, that we are able to bridge those gaps and bridge the generational divide with an example of Beyonce, who helped remix, you know, Frankie Beverly and Maze and paid homage to that. But that's not always what's happening, right? And you see how it takes a younger artist to be able to help reintroduce that music for a younger generation to help bridge that generational divide, right? But that only happens when you have contemporary artists who are reaching back to do that type of work, right? And then again, they don't really get to my point around that we're biasing what is best, and that we're basing best upon the likes and the music style of folks who are from an older generation, right? You're saying one period of music is more superior than another, right? You're saying that the 1980s produced the best music. And I think that's debatable, right? And that's something that's entirely subjective. I don't necessarily agree that the 90s or the 2000s produced the best music. I could argue that the 1960s and 70s Motown era produced some of the best music. But to say that the 80s produce the best music that is universal and that should be played at Black gatherings, I think we have to throw that argument out. That is completely subjective, and it does not take into consideration various demographics of people. It does not take into consideration the complexity of Black experiences. It doesn't take into consideration geography, right? And the differences between what Black folks in the South and the North and the East and the West listen to. And so again, I'm urging an opposition vote. And so here are my voter issues is that one, based upon how the government is defining Frankie Beverly and Maze of the 1980s, as well as Black gatherings, as the barbecues being these sort of broader Black gatherings, they aren't necessarily providing the arguments to support their case, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, in three minutes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go.
I just want to thank everybody again for being here. We're just going to get straight into the voter issues. The first voter issue is the value of community. The only side that is actually upholding the value of community with quality analysis would be the government. The government has shown how important it is to play this type of music at any gathering, whether it be a stroll, whether it be a birthday party, whether it be a wedding, whether it be a funeral. It's more important to play this music because when we have people like the boomers who do come out, when we have people like Gen Xers who do come out, or the millennials or Gen Z, it is important that we have that community. This type of music would not only get the older crowd out, but the people who also grew up listening to it when their mom is cleaning up the kitchen, when their mom is out there, hey, it's Saturday morning, it's time to clean up. This is the music that they will hear, and they will have their kids listen to it. So it's not like, oh, if we play Meg Thee Stallion, that means everybody gonna come out the kitchen. We got Uncle Joe in the back, he's gonna come out because he heard that Meg Thee Stallion. No, that is not what's gonna happen. You play something in the 1980s, it is gonna make sure that we uphold the community. My second voter is that this is really like we went back and forth a little bit about whether or not the music is clean. I'm not saying that. I never said the music was clean. I said that it was clean enough that the kids would not be bombarded with sexually perverse lyrics that are explicit. That is what I said. There's a lot of innuendos because if we talk about me and Mrs. Jones, we understand that that is not Mr. Jones. We understand that he was meeting somebody else's wife. We talk about this kind of music. There are innuendos hidden in the music, but I didn't say that it was wholly clean. What I said was it was important to have different, to have this era of music so that we bring in the community so that we can have this music played 4 hours without having to be like, oh, that's a skip. Grandma's not going to listen to that. Oh, that's a skip. Grandma's not going to listen to that. And so all in all, you're really voting for the government because we provide you a world where we have more community. We are upholding the value and have the quality analysis to explain how we are upholding community by having Frankie and Beverly and Maze be the best music to play in order so that we can in order to increase the feel of community, to increase the feel of jovial feelings, whether we are at a funeral or what they call now a celebration of life, or at a wedding or whatever event it is, so that we can bridge gaps between generations and we can just have a good time and party. And that's why you'll be voting for the government.
All right.
All right, so you have 2 minutes to kind of deliberate and then let us know which side won.
Cool.
While the judge is reviewing the cases presented, you should take this opportunity to share, like, and subscribe. You know, all the YouTube things. Who do you think won this round? Let me know in the comments down below. And the results are in.
All right, ladies. Once again, both of y'all gave some great arguments and some valid points. Leah, I'll go ahead. I'll start with you. For the most part, I think the topic at hand was Frankie Beverly and Maze is the best theme music for barbecue. In my honest opinion, just hearing y'all talk, when you have a barbecue, it's to bring folks of all ages to come together. They can be whether they're 80 to maybe 2 years old, you want everybody to have a good time and dance. I'm not too sure where it got. I don't want to say off topic, but more so in the 80s. If we're talking about the 80s, yes, there are explicit songs or innuendos, but at the end of the day, the topic at hand was Frankie Beverly. And is that the right theme music for them? And as well as the age gap. Janelle, I mean, you made a great point. When you have people of all ages, sometimes people don't want to hear Frankie Beverly. They want to hear Back Your Ass Up by Juvenile. Or when you're at a Greek fest, you want to hear songs that you can twerk to and that your bros, y'all can drink beer and remember the times that y'all had back in college. These are songs that, you play at that particular time, but that's just for that age group. And when y'all mentioned Beyonce, which was a great point on both parts, Beyonce, what she did was she did bridge a gap because kids who are there, whether they be Caucasian, Black, Brown, or whatever, some of them don't know Frankie Beverly. So you play a song that everybody would love for Beyonce to play, and they gave homage to Frankie Beverly. So now you have kids going back looking to see who sung that song. And when you do that, then they take history and they play it as well. And it becomes a trend again. You learn from back in the day with your parents, like you said, when you're cleaning up, they play oldies. And you keep those oldies in hand because as you grow up, you're listening to oldies as well. So for the person who won, I will say, Leah, this goes to you. Only solely based on one thing and one thing only. And I think, Jay, you kind of made the case for her. It was building or that gap not being there. I think by hearing certain songs, whether it's from a younger generation, and like you said, Diddy, I never knew what certain songs was. What's the song with on Notorious B.I.G. Like a Juicy. Juicy wasn't his song.
Right.
Like the beat. So I had to do my homework to find out who was the original song. So, but that being said, I think, Leah, I think you, both cases were good, but as far as the bridging like the gap and it being like divided, I think that closed the deal for me.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks. Bye.
All right. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Champions of Discourse presents Debate This. I have been your hostess, Kayla Byers. Be sure to tune in next Thursday.